Hey, we keep getting people coming in and asking for job applications. Are we hiring?
That depends. Are you planning on coming in for your scheduled shifts next week? Well,
I didn't realize I had the option.
welcome to Rewind Video. I'm Bob.
I'm Rob.
And we love movies. Good ones, bad ones, old ones, new ones, big movies, small movies. Rob, we work at Rewind Video.
So hard.
But our job it's more of a labor of love, don't you think? I mean, it's...
Judging by our paychecks, I'd say so.
Right. Not everybody loves what they do for a living, but we, the collective we, do spend a lot of our lives working somewhere, doing something. And because work is such a big part of most people's lives, it's only natural that the stories that take place in the workplace are the frequent subjects of movies that we watch, right?
Yeah, makes a lot of sense.
Now, part of our job at Rewind Video is to keep a fresh selection of films on the staff recommendation shelf. Each time we update the movies, we adhere to a theme, and this week's theme is On the Job.
Personally, I'm hard at work right now.
You seem hard at work.
Yes. Even though I'm sitting at a table,
right.
You can tell that I'm hard at work.
Well, now, this was your theme.
Yeah, this is my theme.
Mm-hmm.
I've had a lot of jobs over the years, and obviously none are as fulfilling as being in charge of the staff recommendation shelf here at Rewind Video for all of you wonderful people. And I wanted to honor that by picking a topic about having a job.
Not mad at it. There's a lot of different types of work stories to tell. When I dove into this theme a little bit, I was surprised, but now I kind of feel silly realizing it, to discover that it's almost hard to find a movie that doesn't fit this theme. There's like athlete biopics. Those people are working.
Yes.
Yeah. Haunting teens in their dreams or killing them around a lake. That's your job.
Crime movies.
Right.
You could say that committing the crime is your job.
Yes.
I tried to pick one where the story and the plot of the movie is about a person doing their job. And actually, the impetus for this was one of our customers, a regular customer, came in.
Oh, okay.
And her daughter is entering the workforce. And she said, can you guys recommend me some movies about having a job so my daughter can get an idea of what it's like?
Wow, I'm really thrilled to hear that because of the great work we do at the staff recommendation shelf, customers are seeing us as experts in other spaces as well.
We're changing lives.
Right.
There's no doubt about that. So I tried to choose some movies that show different aspects to jobs.
Great. Well,
and we'll get into what those aspects are when we get to the movies.
I love that you did that. I've thought about that too as it relates to my movies, so I'll mention it as well. It was hard to ignore the fact that there are some movies that tell stories about working in video stores. I don't think we chose any of those movies tonight, but you've got like Clerks, Be Kind,
Yes.
Rewind.
Clerks has been on the shelf before.
Yeah. Even, like movies like Ghost World and Scream do a good job of just nodding, celebrating the work that we do.
It's a little too close to home for me, so
Right,
I wanted to branch out a little bit.
Likewise. Good. Well, I can't wait to find out what you chose first and to talk about it. So why don't you kick us off?
Okay. Well, first I'm going to start off with a movie about getting a job. My first choice is Cabin Boy, the Chris Elliott comedy from 1994. This is filed under Comedies at Sea.
Oh.
At the back of the store. Here's the back of the box. A foul-mouthed fishing school... Excuse me. I mean, yeah, maybe, should have gone to fishing school. A foul-mouthed finishing school graduate mistakenly winds up on an ill-fated fishing boat and faces the wrath of a crew that considers him bad luck. Tagline: he's setting sail on the high seas without a rudder, a compass, or a clue.
Yes.
Cabin Boy is... first and foremost, a vehicle for the comedy of Chris Elliott.
The term "the comedy of Chris Elliott,"
The personality of Chris Elliott.
Yeah, right. I don't know if I've ever said that combination of words before,
Yeah.
but don't let me slow you down.
He started out as a production assistant on the David Letterman show back in 1982, and that's how he got a start in the business. I think his dad was in the business somehow, but he appeared in various sketches over the years. Eventually, he became a writer on the show. And for years, he was just kind of known as the guy that would show up as random characters on the Letterman show. I don't know if you remember, if you're old enough to remember that show.
The Letterman show?
Yeah, the original Letterman show, like the 12:30 show when we were real young.
I do remember that, yes.
And so, I don't know, those were in the days when you didn't really know who people were and there wasn't really a way to figure it out. So he just had one of those faces that you'd recognize. You didn't know who he was. You knew he was on the show. Eventually, he got his own sitcom based off of this called Get a Life, which is about him being a paper boy in his 30s living in his parents' basement.
I remember it.
Paper boys are a thing. Right. Even before newspapers died off, paper boys have been long gone.
I remember, though, that was a first job for a lot of people that I grew up with.
Yeah. I guess they're still around somewhere.
Maybe.
But he was in Groundhog Day. He ended up on Saturday Night Live at some point. But he was always kind of on the periphery of mainstream comedy, and he always played this version of like this enthusiastic man-child that he always is.
Yeah.
In Cabin Boy, he starts out as a fancy lad, as the back of the box says.
Right.
But so much of this movie is riding on the Chris Elliott persona, and it sounds like maybe that's not up your alley.
Nope. I struggled with this one, but
yeah,
I'm glad I saw it. There was definitely some things to appreciate, but I did not find myself laughing, and I know that was the goal.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure that like a ton of laughs is the goal. I don't know that it's his comedy was always on that line of comedy and anti-comedy, and it was very much in line with the old David Letterman show.
Yeah.
Where it was subversive, but it was the kind of subversive that you could put on NBC.
Right.
So this, he wasn't quite Andy Kaufman, he wasn't quite like the alternative comedians of the 90s.
Or like Tom Green or something.
Or even Tom, yeah. That's a good comparison.
Yeah.
So I don't know, but also he just has this likability about him that like either you're into or you're not. I kind of grew up with him from when I was a kid, and so this movie is I don't know. It's kind of like it's an adult fairy tale, is what it is.
It is.
It is.
Yeah.
David Letterman comes in about 10 minutes into the movie, and I think he's great in this part. I think I think it's like one of the better parts of the movie.
I almost didn't recognize him because
he has that beard now.
Yes. Yeah.
He's so young.
Yeah, he is. And it was that scene that made me wonder is how tightly scripted this was, because it almost feels like there was probably a lot of dialogue written to just serve up an opportunity for Chris Elliott to just do his thing. I mean,
that could very well be the case. It seems like that might have been the case for a lot of it. I mean, this has the feel of an extended sketch.
Yes.
It's about 80 minutes long, which seems about right. You don't want it to be too much longer than that.
Right.
I do love the visual style of this. Tim Burton is a producer, and it just has this like sweetly unique style to it that is very much in line with that fairy tale part of it, storybook quality that it has. Some of the practical effects are cool because they're so cheap,
like the faces in the clouds.
The faces in the clouds, or the giant guy in the suit.
Yes.
When they have the regular people and they just build like a big rubber dude and they have him jumping, and like it looks so fake, but it's fun to see that in a movie that's very like a Sam Raimi thing almost.
Yeah, and just even the whole production design almost has it lends this almost like a stage play quality to the movie.
Yeah.
But yeah, it works.
Yeah.
It's definitely effective.
It's fun to watch. I don't think it's terribly funny. To get at your point, but the main reason I chose this is because I think it's a good look at an introduction to the workforce. Because when you're beginning your career path, you have to learn what it means to be employed and to meet responsibilities to your coworkers and your employer. And as any cabin boy will tell you, it's a job that definitely teaches you genuine responsibility. The nature of life at sea, Chris Elliott accidentally ends up on this boat, and it's a small boat, it's only 5 to 6 people. And so just because of like the way it is, like you automatically have a job.
Right.
You know, either you're a prisoner or you're doing work on this boat.
True. Yeah.
And because if everyone's not doing their part, you know, it's hard to survive out there.
It's a full-time job in the true sense of the term because you're never not working.
Yeah, you're constantly working. Teaches real responsibility. Every day is life and death.
Right.
Although being threatened with death for not doing your job properly is probably not the best introduction to the workforce, but it is a good look at finding yourself in a job that maybe isn't what you want, but taking out of it what you can take into your career.
Yes.
You know, which is an important thing for a first job when you're first out of school.
Right.
Just find something where you can learn some skills, and or maybe you can be like Chris Elliott in the movie and find something that you really love and want to do for a long time.
Well, that's an interesting point, and it ties into my first movie, which we'll get to in a couple minutes. That those first jobs, you know, you're not really learning marketable skills by any by any stretch, but you're learning how to work.
Yes.
And you're learning the discipline that comes with needing to abide by a schedule and just have responsibility.
Being there on time, finishing what you're supposed to do at a certain, you know, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, that's a big step in having a job and having a career full of jobs, and especially for a first job. So if Chris Elliott is a flavor that you enjoy, Cabin Boy is it's a adult fairy tale at sea. It's an interesting look at getting a start in the job market, and so I'm putting it on the shelf for On the Job.
You know, I'll tell you something funny. You had told me that you were choosing this, and I started cycling through my recollection of films from the 90s. I remember that this was an older movie, and it had a comedian in it. And my mind went to Cabin Boy. Okay, this is a camp movie. This is a campground movie. I don't remember who's in it. Yeah. And then I picked the box up off the shelf, and there's Chris Elliott kind of suspended on an anchor above open water. I was like, well, this is definitely not what I thought it was.
That explains why you were looking for it in the summer camp section the comedy section.
Yeah, that day I was wandering around the store for like hours.
Yeah. Good thing I was there to direct you finally.
Indeed. Well, fun first choice, and excited to hear what the customers think about this one. I'm sure there's a lot of them out there who, like me, just maybe didn't see this and need a reason to go back and see something.
Sometimes you need to get your pipes clean.
Indeed. Well, I'm going to pick up from there and take us to the "You must be this tall to rent this movie" section of the store. And I am plucking for my first choice Adventureland from 2009. And the vibe here, similar to how you chose a movie that was about getting a job, I'm choosing a movie that is about love on the job.
Ooh.
Love on the job.
Always dangerous.
Yes, indeed. Here's the back of the box. When James Brennan has to cancel his dream summer vacation and make some money for grad school, the only job he can get is at Adventureland, a tacky amusement park where the games are rigged and the rides make you hurl. But it's where he meets M, and his roller coaster ride to nowhere turns into the best summer ever. Tagline here is, "Nothing brings people together like a crappy summer job." Good tagline.
Yeah.
Not a bad one.
I dig that.
Yeah. So
that's true too.
It is true. I love this movie. I think that it keeps getting better with age. Adventureland takes place in 1987. I was younger than the kids in this movie when we were living in 1987, but I remember this time period, and I think that it captures the late 80s really well.
Yeah.
It helps that the theme park where this movie takes place is kind of stuck in the 80s even today. But yeah, I think that the director really did a good job of capturing the time period.
It also captures that time period of your life.
It does, yes.
You know, that time between high school and college when you're just like, like you're in college and you're supposed to be figuring stuff out, and you clearly are not.
You're not.
And obviously nobody does.
Nobody does. Yeah.
But this idea that like by taking this job, he's like becoming some sort of like a failure or just like lost.
Yes.
That's a feeling that you can only have during that time of your life.
Oh yeah, I mean, just the idea of a summer job.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, that's a thing from
Those were the days.
different era.
I got a summer job here at the store, and that was, I'm not going to say how long ago that was.
It turned into an all-season job.
Yeah, many seasons.
Yeah.
How many seasons have I been here?
So this also deals in a subject that I think makes for a great story about being on the job, which is workplace romances. So I remember having crushes on coworkers when I was this age. My Adventureland was a local grocery store, but the experience of, looking down the registers and finding somebody that was cute is something that I remember well. So this works for me in that respect as well. And it turns out that this experience was familiar for the director, Greg Mottala. This is kind of a semi-autobiographical story for him. Mottala directed Adventureland 2 years after making a huge splash with Superbad, and he clearly had a blank check from studios after that movie to just do whatever he wanted. So he went in a slightly different direction, and that's one of the reasons that this movie didn't really find an audience. It was pitched in trailers as brought to you by the people behind Superbad, the comedic geniuses, and
I was the target audience when that came out, and
right.
I remember thinking, and I liked it, and even then I was like, I'm not sure what this is supposed to be here.
Yeah, it is funny.
It takes a minute to figure it out.
Right. Yeah, there's definitely some comedy here, but it's certainly trying to do something different than Superbad, and I think when audience discovered that, it ended up really not doing very well in the box office, but it's gone on to find its home. The cast is great. James is played by Jesse Eisenberg. Kristen Stewart plays M. Martin Starr is here. Bill Hader and Kristen Wiig have supporting roles. They were only on set for 4 days, so they knocked all their stuff out really fast. But they're both wonderful. Ryan Reynolds is here, and we get a good old fashioned romance at a mind numbing summer job. So why did I choose this? As I already mentioned, there's a lot about this movie that reminds me of my youth. I love the irritating nuances that come with showing up at a job every day, and they're captured here really well. Like we get to see, the people who work at the amusement park just fighting through the pain of hearing Falco's "Rock Me Amadeus" every single day.
The first 20 times, cool.
Right. Tiny paychecks, annoying customers, all that stuff is there. So
also that idea of especially summer jobs or first jobs, where it's just like they're very unimportant jobs when it comes down to it, and so so many things are just like left up to be like whatever. Like, who didn't show up today? Who cares? Like
we'll figure it out.
Yeah.
But I do really love that component of the romance that unfolds at work, because it's such a, developing a crush on a coworker is a really different dynamic than dating someone that you meet at like the bar, for instance, because like you're with this person 8 hours a day, and they're seeing you at your best. They're seeing you make mistakes. It's all out there in the open, and it creates something new. And I think, in addition to that, with what we see, the story being told in this movie, there's also just that weird phenomenon of being young and in love. And clearly these characters haven't figured out how to be in relationships yet. Yeah. And so there are a lot of missteps associated with, figuring out how to date somebody. And it kind of comes together into a pretty captivating story. The soundtrack, fucking amazing here. There's songs by The Replacements, Velvet Underground, Bowie, Big Star, New York Dolls.
That's good.
Yeah, great representation of the era.
It's also kind of a losing your virginity movie.
It is.
Which you don't see coming, because there's that genre of movies in the 80s.
Yeah.
In 1987, where you have those kinds of movies where this isn't that kind of movie, but plot-wise, it is that movie.
Indeed it is. I also really love Kristen Stewart in this movie. So Stewart catches a lot of flack for being somewhat one note for a lot of people, but I really disagree. And Roger Ebert agrees with me. He gave this 3 out of 4 stars, saying, "What surprised me was how much I admired Kristen Stewart, who's in Twilight playing below her grade level, Here's an actress ready to do important things. Together and with the others, they make Adventureland more real and more touching than it may sound. So if you're looking for a nostalgic depiction of young love at a dead-end summer job, Adventureland is the exact movie you're looking for, I think. Plus you get an unhinged Bill Hader, which is the best version of Bill Hader. So going on the shelf.
Yeah, it's going to be a classic, I think. I think it's one of those movies that really does get better with age. I'm not a huge fan of Ryan Reynolds in this. I think it's weird. I think I like Bill Hader in this, but like I think the energy level of his scenes and then like the energy of Ryan Reynolds are just like a little bit off from the movie.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
And I don't disagree with you. And I think that that's exacerbated by the fact that we now live in a time where Hollywood is thrusting Ryan Reynolds down our throat, and they're just at every turn trying to say, this man is a movie star. Pay attention to him. He's the best. And he hadn't quite gotten to that point when he started in this, but he was on the cusp. And
But if Ryan Reynolds is anything, he's a charisma machine.
Yes.
And in this, he has like anti-charisma, which is weird. And then also Kristen Wiig and Bill Hader are almost in a different movie.
Almost.
Yes. You know, and I think especially when you go in expecting from the director of Superbad, and then you see their scenes, then it seems like the rest of it maybe is a little low energy, and I think maybe that's why it was a little bit hard to like connect with people. I think like I do like those scenes with Bill Hader and Kristen Wiig, but they are just a little bit off from the rest of the movie, I think.
I'm with you. I do wonder when I see their scenes, what would this movie feel like without them?
Yeah.
And I don't think it's better, but you're right. It does almost feel like they're in a different film.
I want them in it. You know, like it's not so much that it's distracting. I like them in it. It's it's good to have them. But yeah, it's just a little bit off. Yeah. You know, and I think maybe that's why it threw some of the people off. But I think as time goes on, I think those edges get smoothed out a little bit.
Yeah. You make last thing I'll say. You make a really interesting point about Ryan Reynolds, and what's funny for me is that I have grown so weary of his cynical, I'm playing Deadpool in every movie take that.
Like it was cool the first 5 times.
Right. And here we get Ryan Reynolds where he's not doing that. And so it's refreshing in that sense, but only in the context of everything else he's done since then.
Yeah. I guess if he was doing something more interesting besides just being anti-charisma.
Right.
He's it's not great in that, but whatever.
Good stuff.
Great movie, though. Great movie.
Glad you think so.
Speaking of charisma machines, I'm going to take us to a movie featuring one. This is a movie about somebody who's great at their job. My second choice is Roadhouse, the basic cable classic starring Patrick Swayze from 1989.
Rob, I've had customers come up to me in the store and say, that Rob, he is a big Patrick Swayze fan.
I am a big Patrick Swayze fan.
And I'm
maybe the number one.
Perhaps. I'm excited for them to hear you talk about Roadhouse so that they all understand why there's such a passion for Patrick Swayze.
Well, as any regular customer knows, I will talk endlessly about Roadhouse, so they probably all heard it before. Mm-hmm. This is filed in the bar brawl exploitation section.
Brawl exploitation, yeah.
Bar brawl exploitation.
Yeah.
Section.
It's easier to read on the sign above the shelves than it is to say out loud.
Yeah, that's in the action wing. This is directed by Rowdy Harrington, who directed the movie Striking Distance with Bruce Willis.
Oh, Take Bigelow.
Yeah. Here's the back of the box of Roadhouse. The Double Deuce is the meanest, loudest, and rowdiest bar south of the Mason-Dixon line, and Dalton has been hired to clean it up. He might not look like much, but the PhD-educated bouncer proves he's more than capable, busting the heads of troublemakers and turning the Roadhouse into a jumping hotspot. But Dalton's romance with the gorgeous Dr. Clay puts him on the bad side of cutthroat local big shot Brad Wesley. Tagline.
Yes.
Dalton lives like a loner, fights like a professional, and loves like there's no tomorrow.
Oh, does he ever?
So I spent some time going into this episode. I took the special edition off the shelf here, and I went through the pamphlet, and I listened to the director's commentary. So I found some tidbits about this movie.
Great.
That I didn't know before. The monster truck, Bigfoot,
Yes.
That is the seventh Bigfoot, and it was built for this movie.
Wow.
And I assume they eventually use it on the monster truck circuit, but it was also in Tango and Cash.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's big time.
I've been looking for a theme to bring Tango and Cash to the table.
One day.
Yeah.
Red, the guy who owns the auto parts store, do you know who that guy is?
No.
His name is Red West, and he was a high school friend of Elvis. He was a part of the Memphis Mafia, and he was at Elvis's side, like, from the beginning. Like, he was a high school friend. He was, like, his body man. He was, like, the bodyguard next to him, like, up until almost the very end, until 1976 when Elvis's dad fired him because Red West was starting to say, like, hey, I think we need to do something about Elvis's drug problem. And Elvis's dad was like, we don't need this guy around anymore. And
right.
Sure enough, Elvis was dead in like a year. But yeah, any Elvis movie that you watch, he's a character in the movie. Like, and also Jeff Healey, the musician, he kind of accidentally played himself in this movie. He's a Canadian musician, and one of the writers for this script had seen him play somewhere. And for a script element, he's like, all right, cool. A blind white guy who plays the blues with a guitar in his lap. And when they were in pre-production, Jimmy Iovine, who was the music supervisor, read the script and was like, I know this guy. Like, this is the real person. He's like, I think I can get him to be in the movie. And so they tracked him down and gave him an audition, and he got the part.
How cool is that?
So I think Roadhouse is an unironically great movie. When you brought up Predator, you brought up the Letterboxd top 4.
Yes.
And Predator was the one movie that will always be in your top 4.
Always.
I have a similar philosophy with Roadhouse. I rotate my top 4 movies.
Yeah.
All my 5-star movies I consider my favorite movie or favorite movies. And I rotate them in and out of my top 5 or top 4. But Roadhouse never leaves. Is it my number one favorite movie? I hesitate to say I have a favorite movie.
Right.
But Roadhouse is my brand. Let's put it that way.
I love it.
Because it kind of has this reputation as not a great movie, but I think it is actually fantastic. And I've felt that for a long time.
I find it difficult to find much to complain about as it relates to Roadhouse. I don't have the same relationship you do, but boy, I enjoy this.
It's gained its reputation from being a cable TV mainstay over the years.
Sure. Which, not the only Patrick Swayze movie that fits that description.
No, definitely not. But for one, that means it's extremely watchable.
Yeah.
It means it's extremely rewatchable. Mm-hmm. It generally means you can watch it without the sound on and still understand what's happening.
Right.
But also because of that, a lot of the great things about this movie, a lot of people aren't even familiar with because of basic cable.
Right.
You know, the violence, the language, the gore, the nudity, the sex. There's lots of all those things.
There is.
And I think also people have gotten the impression that the filmmakers, this is like often referred to as like a good, bad movie. But I don't think there's anything bad about it. I think the filmmakers knew exactly what they were making, especially judging by the director's commentary. Harrington has said that, like, first of all, they were going for humor wherever they could. Anytime they could make it funny, they tried to make it funny. They tried to make everything big and melodramatic, very arch. He used a lot of primary colors on purpose. He never says the word camp. But, like, he comes right up to the line. He's like, we know exactly what we're making here.
Right,
you
right.
know? And it's also a straight-up Western.
Yeah.
You know, and I watching this movie on basic cable, even HBO growing up, I didn't, you know, I would have told you I had never seen a Western. You know what I mean? Right. Westerns are not my thing. And now I watch it, I'm like, holy shit, this is it's all the Western beats.
Yes.
You know, from beginning to end. And they knew they were doing that too. Like, that was not an accident. Plus, you have Dean Cundy, who's the DP here, who's just fucking awesome.
Yeah.
Who has shot a lot of Carpenter stuff, a lot of Spielberg stuff, also Rock and Roll High School, which we've covered on the show.
We have, yes.
That's another thing you lose on basic cable, and the 4x3 aspect especially.
Oh, yeah.
You know, you just don't see the actual great composition to a lot of these shots.
No, you don't.
This cast is great. You know, you've got Kelly Lynch, Ben Gazzara, Sam Elliott, fantastic. Keith David is in this for a minute. He got cut out. His part was much bigger.
I love any chance I get to see Keith David on screen. So even if it's a small, just one scene at a time,
Yeah.
give me more.
But he's definitely a blink and you miss him type of role.
For sure.
There's actually a couple people further down the call sheet that I wanted to bring up, though.
Okay.
Chino Fats Williams, the guy who Patrick Swayze tosses his keys to at the beginning, and he's like, hey, take my old shitty car.
Yeah.
He was in Action Jackson, if you remember.
Yes.
Which I always like to bring up when I can.
Right.
And Julie Michaels, who plays Brad Wesley's blonde bombshell girlfriend at the end, and she does the striptease for Dalton at the end. Yeah. You'd think she was like a model / actress, which she may have been at the time. But she actually went on to a long career in stunt work.
Really?
She's done a lot of stunts, including Tony Scott's Domino, which we've covered on the show.
Oh, yes.
And she's even, she's been a stunt coordinator. She even won an Emmy for stunts on TV.
Good for her.
Yeah. But Roadhouse is really all about Patrick Swayze.
It is.
He's the only person who could have played this role.
I don't disagree.
In this way.
Yeah, maybe that's the qualifier it needs, because I think that other people could have played this part, but this movie wouldn't be the movie that it is today.
Absolutely.
If anyone else was in that role.
There's no way you could have pulled off like the I'm a philosopher bouncer with anybody else.
Right.
I think Steven Seagal thinks he's this guy.
Oh, he wishes he was this guy.
He is not this guy. He definitely thinks he is.
Yeah.
But this is also the era, this is 89, so you still had Stallone and Schwarzenegger, who were like the big tough guys, the action guys of the era. But then you had Bruce Willis, who was kind of the anti those guys, and he was like, oh, he's kind of just like a regular guy. But Swayze is not Bruce Willis, you know? Like he has this chill quality about him, you know, that Bruce Willis doesn't have. He's like Swayze is an athlete. Like he's a genuine athlete. He's a dancer. Yeah. He's believable at martial arts. He's believable at kicking these guys' asses. He's believable as like this Zen, you know, bouncer dude.
Yeah.
Which you can't imagine Bruce Willis being that guy. You know?
Right.
So yeah, it's like a singular role for him, and it's just like one of those things that's like it was the perfect role for the perfect guy in the perfect movie, and it just all came together for that one moment.
I wish we still lived in a world where, and I don't even actually know that we ever did outside of this movie, where guys like Dalton were bouncers, because anymore it's just like the biggest dude you can find who's either tall or wide to sit at the door. And
I have a feeling it's always been like that, and that you know, maybe that's the thing. Maybe the reason Wade Garrett and Dalton are so famous is because there's only 3 good bouncers in the whole country.
Right.
Something like that.
Yeah.
But he is definitely someone who has excelled at their job.
Oh, for sure.
He has a reputation, you know, and it follows him around. He's one of the best bouncers in the definitely the region, maybe the country, probably the world. He can turn a business around with just a few changes. You know, this should probably be a case study in business school.
He's more than a bouncer. I would much prefer to watch the Dalton version of Bar Rescue than the one that is currently airing. So I think it would be a more entertaining show.
I'm a fan of I haven't watched it in a while, but I'm a fan of what's his name, John Taffer.
Yeah,
you know, he's
different brand of
Dalton without the karate,
right? yes.
But you can see how good he is by the changes in the bar and in the staff. Underneath him after he implements what he's doing, because like the bouncers are all way more confident. You see the waitress is like singing at the bar, and like that, it's just showing how everyone is blossoming. And so like that's the sign of a good manager, and that's what it comes down to. Is like everyone on the staff is reaching their full potential. And that's really what it comes down to. And so even though it doesn't, you know, end up working out for Dalton at the Double Deuce, like he's improved the business and he's helped the staff become a better version of themselves. And so that to me is somebody really excelling at their job.
It's a great case to make and hard to argue with. I don't have a lot to add. I think that you summed up what is really worth appreciating about Roadhouse, because it does get, I think, unfairly pegged as just an ironic movie. You know, if you like this, you're kind of joking, but no, it's a lot of fun to watch. And if you've only ever seen it on basic cable, you're missing a lot of what makes this movie great.
Yes. I mean, someone gets their throat ripped out, for Christ's sake.
Right. Yeah.
It's in the conversation for my favorite movie of all time. It's a classic, up and down in every way. And if you're looking for a movie about someone who's an elite performer at their job, you couldn't do better than Dalton. So I'm putting this on the shelf for On the Job.
Great pick. I always look forward to a reason to watch Roadhouse.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to go in a different direction. My next movie is The Assistant from 2019. I grabbed this from the, well, that wasn't really any fun section of the store.
Very small section.
Yeah, very small. Back of the box synopsis. One day in the life of Jane, a recent college graduate and aspiring film producer who has recently landed her dream job as a junior assistant to a powerful entertainment mogul. Her day is much like any other assistant's, making coffee, changing paper on the copy machine, ordering lunch, arranging travel, taking phone messages, onboarding a new hire. But as Jane follows her daily routine, she grows increasingly aware of the abuse that insidiously colors every aspect of her workday. And when she takes a stand, she discovers the true depth of the system in which she entered. So there's no tagline for this, but I think that it could have been, fuck. This is a movie that had been on my radar for a while, and tonight's theme gave me a reason to finally give it a watch. It's clearly borrowing from the Harvey Weinstein story that has been in the zeitgeist for quite a while now. But its relationship to the workplace is an interesting one. On one hand, this is about the experience of starting at the bottom of the totem pole en route to the dream job that you have always wanted.
Yeah.
And the assistant gives us a painfully authentic look at how sad the bottom of the totem pole can feel. A lot of this movie is watching Jane's job unfold in real time. So, it's not exciting. It's not entertaining. It's dull. It's mundane. Nothing is even really truncated. I kept wondering as I was watching this, are we really going to just sit here and see her clean up crumbs in an office or load paper into a printer? And yes, we are indeed going to watch that. Well, it doesn't sound like it makes for good cinema. It really cements you in this woman's day-to-day life, which is an important part of the story is trying to tell. So in addition to the shit associated with starting at the bottom, this is also about looking toward the top and getting a sobering glimpse at what awaits and how some people handle positions of power. One of the things that I really found interesting is how two people at opposite ends of this corporate ladder engage with each other when they are in the same workplace and what that relationship ends up being like. I think a lot of people are going to describe this as a slow movie, but I think that a better description is that it's a quiet movie. I was really surprised how much
quiet.
Yeah, it stuck with me for weeks after I watched this for the first time. Here's a film that shows you exactly how much distance there is between someone in an entry-level position and the role that they someday hope to achieve. It highlights how complicit people in an office can be when they're confronted with abuse. And it shows us that ascending in a company isn't always about how well you do your job. Then there's also just the sad reality that, in corporate America, and I don't think a lot of people realize this, the fact that HR exists to protect the company, not the employee. Yeah. And that's something that gets highlighted here. Why did I choose this? Like I said, this movie really kind of lodged itself in my brain after I saw it, dug its heels in. It's sobering in every sense of the word. So writer and director Kitty Green definitely took inspiration from the Weinstein story, but she also sought stories of women in tech and corporate America. This isn't just a story about what happens in the film industry. It's true of what a lot of women experience in different industries. And I like that the tension in this film isn't necessarily what we see on screen. It comes from realizing what awaits this character after, the workday ends and the next one and the infinite number of them afterward await.
It's also about, to me, man, it was about how much this job really is just trash. This job sucks.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter what the workplace environment is. The job itself is one of those thankless positions that's just like with this thing dangling at the end of it that is just like the position is automatically exploitative.
Yes.
Just by its very nature.
Right. It makes you feel like there's one person in this office who matters.
Yeah.
And everyone else who's working in any capacity is just waiting to get that job, and they're doing something nonsense. And they're doing like mundane, ridiculous work to get there.
And it's the sweepstakes nature of it too, because she gets that thing dangled in front of her that was like, I'm grooming you to be the next great producer or whatever. And like, that he said that to every single person in that office.
Everybody.
And that's how you get people to work for nothing and do horrible work instead of bringing them along for the process.
I could not agree more. It's just this fantasy that exists for everyone, and it probably gets fulfilled for a tiny, tiny fraction of these people. I really like that this movie casts a spotlight on an abusive workplace in a more relatable way. There's definitely a population of people that have experienced abuse themselves at work, but there's a whole separate population of people that are exposed to the culture of abuse, and that's a much larger population. You get to see that here. Finally, I think there's the fact that the assistant examines this notion of expectation versus reality, and you kind of just touched on it. This comes with pursuing your dream job. I think that a lot of people just hope that they want to be something, and they feel like they can get into to any industry and quickly make their way into what they want to do. But boy, you have to start somewhere, and this shows you that the dream job is often a lot further away than you want it to be.
Is it even worth it?
Right. Yeah. Is it worth it? I liked Justin Chang's take on this film. In his review for NPR, he said, "It's the rigorous understatement of the assistant that makes it so powerful in its vision of how easily the Harvey Weinsteins of the world could exploit their absolute authority for years with little fear of consequence." This comes in at a 3.5 on Letterboxd. I thought it was a powerful watch and really stuck with me. So
that's a good one.
Going on the shelf is my
Nice.
second choice for On the Job.
Well, that's a shitty job.
It is a shitty job.
That is a shitty job. I'm going to take us to another shitty job. In fact, my next movie is a look at how to leave a shitty job.
Oh. Something that our character from The Assistant might be interested in.
She will eventually. There's that's not a job you don't leave.
Right.
But anyway, my choice is Mad Max Fury Road.
Yes.
This is, of course, George Miller's 2015 continuation of the Mad Max universe. This is filed in the action wing of the store in the Chase movie section.
Oh, okay.
Here's the back of the box. In a post-apocalyptic wasteland, a woman rebels against a tyrannical ruler in search of her homeland with the aid of a group of female prisoners, a psychotic worshiper, and a drifter named Max. Tagline is not up to par with this movie. It's what a lovely day.
What a lovely... Interesting. I mean, that's a quote from the movie, but not a tagline.
It's not a tagline.
That's not a tagline.
Yeah. So that's a disappointment.
That is, yeah.
But okay, nobody needs me to tell them to watch this movie. This is a masterpiece.
Yes.
I did recently read a book on this movie. It was the oral history of the making of this movie. We do have books in the store too.
I love that.
We sell books. We don't rent them.
Readable movies.
Readable movies. They're very long movies. I don't normally like movies, but
Right.
it's easier to put down a book. But this was a very troubled production, which I think a lot of people know. It took about 20 years to make. And not like off and on. Like there was an office open. People were working on this movie for pretty much all of that time. Somebody was sitting in a room doing something, building out the world, working on drawings, working on dialogue. Every character had a backstory. Every piece of clothing had a backstory. Every little bit and piece of everything. And even though this movie was in production for 20 years, there never was a script.
That's amazing.
It was just storyboards from beginning to end. Just pictures with words and which was a real point of contention for the actors after a while. Also because George Miller shot everything in sequence for the most part.
Yeah. And
he's one of those guys, at least for this movie, that edits while he's shooting. And so if he's shooting a scene between two people, he'll shoot you doing a thing for 5 seconds. All right, cut. Move the cameras. Do it from the other side. Now your line. This is a great vehicle movie. One of the reasons is because of that long production schedule, because they were just, for that whole time, they're just designing new vehicles and building new stuff and designing the stunts over 20 years.
I'm not surprised it took that long, given how much of this is done practically.
Oh yeah, and, I mean they were figuring out these stunts the whole time, you know, and we talked recently about Unstoppable, which I've called the greatest vehicle movie of all time. This one's right up there. This is definitely the greatest vehicle design of all time.
I think this edges out Unstoppable for me in that conversation, but boy, they're close.
On the production, they were doing stunts. They had a stunt to do every day, or more than one stunt to do every day, which is unheard of in making movies. Normally, it's like you have 15 stunts in like 4 weeks or whatever. This is like we have 150 days of shooting, we have 250 stunts we have to do, which instantly makes it way more tense because you're working with all these people and there's stunts every day, and the people you work with might die.
Right.
Like every day. Every day someone you work with might die, and it's also a working situation where you guys are out in the middle of nowhere. Which is also like, so you have this bond with people because you're the only people and you're all together, and every single day somebody might die.
Right.
Which is actually, come to think of it, that's a working situation that we could all learn from too.
Yes. Yes. It's no wonder that Charlize Theron wanted to leave her job.
Yes. So the working conditions were brutal, and so there's a lot of consternation on set and you know, whatever. But this movie is just bursting with crazy old man energy. George Miller, crazy old Australian. I mean, all Australians are crazy anyway. But you also have the DP on this movie, John Seal, who had already retired. And I guess the original DP had to leave for some reason, and they're like, well, let's call this guy. He's Australian. He'll do it. And he was 72, just like George Miller. Wow. And, first day on the set, they had to like shoot a thing on a truck, and like he was like climbing up on the camera and like hanging off the side of it and whatever, and everyone's like, oh fuck, this dude's 70 years old. Like, he doesn't give a fuck.
Australians, man.
Yeah.
they're wacky.
The second unit director on this and the stunt coordinator was Guy Norris, who was the stunt driver for Max in the first movie.
Oh wow.
He was also he decided to do a lot of these stunts himself. He was in his mid-50s at this point. And so, like, generally, when you're that guy, you're the stunt coordinator, you're, like, in your mid-50s, you're not doing all the hard stunts, but, like, he's like, I'm going to do these myself just to do it. And so the first stunt on the first day, they were going to crash Max's Interceptor. And he's like, well, obviously I have to do this. And there were no brakes on the car. And he was like, well, fuck it. Like, we're not stopping anyway. So in the movie, the car flipped 9 times. In rehearsal, he flipped it 13 times.
Oh my God.
And so it was just one of those situations where everybody on set was just like, all right, all the oldest guys on set right now are like just fucking laying down the law. So like, we don't really have a choice but to like fucking give it our 110% here. Yes, this is a great example of somebody leaving their job in a blaze of glory.
Indeed.
Furiosa is working for Immortan Joe, and she's like a driver or whatever they call her.
Yeah.
And he treats the people he rules over poorly. He treats his employees poorly. And that's one of those jobs that, maybe I don't think you can leave that job quietly.
No.
She's got to like fuck shit up on her way out the door. So she makes sure to hit her boss where it hurts. He takes his most prized possession. And also it's like, it's worth letting your boss know how much damage you can do on your way out. And
yes.
No one wants a bad job, but sometimes you get stuck with one, or sometimes you have a good job with a bad boss. And this is a good example of like, taking your job by the balls and going out the door in style.
If you're going to quit, she has set the bar for what you should strive for.
Yes, that's definitely a great way to quit your job. So, Fury Road, it's an avant-garde classic, one of the best action movies of all time.
Yeah.
A singular work of art, a singular vision, and a great blueprint for leaving a shitty job. So I'm putting it on the shelf for On the Job.
Boy, we really could talk about this for a long time.
Yeah.
I love how richly imagined this world is. I mean, you touched on it at the top, but everything from the way the characters are designed to the different tribes and just everything. And the vehicles, it's just such a vision.
Yeah.
And
I think I mentioned this to you the last time we spoke about this movie, how it has a John Waters vibe to it almost, like something just a little bit off. Like it's a little bit of like humor about like the grotesquerie of itself.
Yes. Well, I love this. There's never not a good time to rewatch Mad Max Fury Road. So excellent choice. And it does fit the theme of on the job, especially if you're looking to leave said job.
Yes.
So wonderful pick. Well, I'm going to close things out with my final choice. Now, I picked this movie up from the shelves right between the films The Postman and You've Got Mail. It's right from the special delivery section of the store. And my final choice is 1995's Seven. So most of our customers are familiar with this, but I'm still going to go through the back of the box. When retiring police detective William Somerset tackles a final case with the aid of newly transferred David Mills, they discover a number of elaborate and grisly murders. They soon realize they are dealing with a serial killer who is targeting people he thinks represent one of the 7 deadly sins. Somerset also befriends Mills' wife, Tracy, who is pregnant and afraid to raise her child in the crime-riddled city. Tagline here is 7 deadly sins, 7 ways to die. Womp womp. Yeah. What a bad tagline.
That's a first draft.
Right.
It's like we got to make the poster, just throw something on there.
Yes, exactly. So like I said, Seven's a movie that many of us have seen, but for as emotionally challenging as this movie can be, I will never, ever turn down an opportunity to watch this. And every time I do, I see something new. This rewatch was no exception. So obviously I'm watching this through the lens of films about the workplace. And the two detectives at the center of this story are at work during every waking moment of this film. Their job takes them out into the world, and the case that they're working utterly consumes them.
One thing I've learned from movies and television over the years is if you're a homicide detective, you're working 24/7 at all times until you retire.
Absolutely. And it's certainly true here. But it was reading the back of the box that inspired a question about Seven that I had never asked myself, which is, who is the main character of this movie? Who is the sun that all of the other planets orbit around? And the answer, I think, is right there. It's Morgan Freeman's character, Detective Somerset. I don't think it's obvious at first. Yeah. You know, he's a detective who's on his way out, and so you could think that this movie's about Brad Pitt, the new guy coming in to learn the ropes. It could be about the serial killer who's wreaking havoc on the city and has a very elaborate plan for how he wants to commit his murders. But Detective Somerset is the structure that this grimy house is built around.
For sure. Brad Pitt's character is just along for the ride.
Right.
Because Morgan Freeman's figuring the stuff out. He's the one that sees it from the beginning. He's like, first of all, he's like, I know this is going to be a lot of cases. Like, I know I'm going to be stuck on this job.
Yeah.
He sees everything from the beginning.
Yeah.
He knows what's happening. So yeah, this is definitely his story.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that finally we have a case of the back of the box getting something right, because it really centers on Detective Somerset and kind of points us at the lens that we should be looking through when watching Seven, which I had never thought of it that way. But for those unfamiliar, this is David Lynch's second feature after Alien 3. While he was new at the time to directing movies, he had countless music videos under his belt.
Yeah, he was kind of a legend.
Yeah, and I didn't know quite how many he had done.
Yeah.
But when I was scrolling through his IMDb resume, I was shocked at some of the artists. So he directed music videos for, just to name a few, Eddie Money, Loverboy, The Outfield, Paula Abdul, Steve Winwood, Don Henley, Madonna, Aerosmith. I mean, that's just a handful of the artists, but boy, he was busy.
He was one of the top music video directors of the era right before we started watching music videos.
Yes.
You know what I mean? So all those music videos of just a couple years before, so we didn't quite catch them, but we were familiar with the visual style by the time he started making movies.
100%.
He also made a lot of commercials, I think, around that time.
He did. So why did I choose this? There are the reasons that I love Seven in general, and then the reasons why I chose it for this theme. This movie is an 800-pound gorilla, and I could talk all day about like the art direction, the way this is shot, the storytelling, the writing, the credit sequence. But I'm going to focus.
That was a game changer. The credit sequence.
The credit sequence is fucking incredible.
One of the best of all time.
Indeed, absolutely. But our theme is on the job, so the workplace component of Seven it really focuses on the relationship between Mills and Somerset, Pitt and Freeman, and I love the dynamic between these two guys who are so dramatically different from one another. Is really what makes this so watchable, at least for me. They're forced to work together. They don't want to work together at the beginning of the movie. Somerset's like, thanks, but no thanks.
I've had to train people on jobs before, and it's the worst.
It's the worst.
It's the worst.
Especially when...
Nothing against people I'm training. I just hate it.
Oh, yeah. And, I mean, to have to train someone on a case like this...
and just teaching people the sections of the store here is hard enough. It takes weeks to learn those.
Yeah. These guys couldn't have less in common. And you feel that tension at the beginning, but you see a bond that slowly forms and germinates throughout the week. It's like a whole week that we see this story take place. And slowly but surely, they start to work together well and develop a different relationship. And I think if you focus on the way their partnership grows, it's almost as fascinating as the crazy shit that's happening around them with this case, because they actually need each other in a certain sense. Brad Pitt's character comes across as just inept, and you come to realize, I think, that he starts to balance Somerset out. I don't think that either detective could solve this case on their own, and I'm not sure that either could solve this case if they were partnered with anyone else. And
just a magical combination that happened in that moment.
It is.
It's a moment in time, everybody.
It really is. So Fincher's always been incredible at casting the perfect actors for every role in his films. And that's true as ever with Seven. I think that, everyone is just batting 1,000 here. But the filmmakers never thought that they could secure this cast. Pitt came on board first, and he helped save the movie in more ways than one. He insisted that the first draft of the film, which is the one he read, was the movie that actually got shot, because it went through almost a dozen different iterations from there. And the end, which everyone fixates on, and rightfully so, changed dramatically after that first draft. It just became a procedural thriller. Mm-hmm. I mean, nothing surprising at all. But Brad Pitt basically said, "I'm not in this if you don't shoot the movie that I read." So I'm glad he did that. He also made...
Without that, it's not what it is.
It's not what it is.
It has to be leading somewhere.
Right. And, the filmmakers always saw Kevin Spacey as the right guy for this part, and they couldn't afford him. But Brad Pitt basically said, find the money, because he is absolutely the right guy. Yeah. They even saw Morgan Freeman as a moonshot when it came to casting, but Morgan Freeman read this script and was like, I want to be in this, so let's figure out how to do it.
And especially coming off of Alien 3, to find an all-star cast that wants to work with you is incredible.
Yeah, absolutely. The fact that you get Gwyneth Paltrow is just icing on the cake. But, like I said, a lot of first drafts of this movie. The final cut of the working cut of the film really didn't test well, especially the end. So the studio was lobbying hard for, let's take that box and put a dog's head in it instead of what it ended up being. And thankfully Fincher was like, nope, not a chance. It stays the way it was written. I don't need to read any reviews for this, because you don't need them. This is a masterpiece. Yeah. And incidentally, I was surprised when I was scrolling through Letterboxd looking at people's takes on this, because there are quite a few negative reviews saying this is 90 minutes of slog in order to get to 20 minutes of incredible movie. And I couldn't disagree more. I love every minute of this grimy, sludgy world that Fincher has put on screen.
I agree with you, but I see, after all the years of working in the store, I've come to learn that people just want different things out of movies, and they watch movies in different ways than we do.
That's true.
So I can see where you're coming. So if people are like, if you have expectations of being like, oh, a bunch of gross, crazy stuff happens in this movie,
Yeah.
you get to about 20 minutes of that. So if that's all you're looking for, okay.
Yeah.
That's right. I'm just looking for reasons to not throw people out of the store at this point.
Right.
I've gotten a lot of arguments.
Well, if you're looking for a film where two guys who are completely committed to their job and working far away from a cubicle get into some crazy hijinks pursuing a serial killer, Seven is your film, and I'm throwing it on the shelf for my final choice in the on-the-job theme.
Great choice. I wouldn't personally call it hijinks, but you do you.
You wouldn't say this is a buddy cop movie? This doesn't belong in the buddy cop section?
No, I got vetoed on that.
Okay, gotcha. Well, as always, thank you for making the trip to Rewind Video. If you're looking for a movie to watch after work that takes you back into the workplace, we've got you covered with Cabin Boy, Adventureland, Roadhouse, The Assistant, Mad Max Fury Road, and Seven.
To get on our mailing list or to get in touch with us here at the store, go to rewindvideopod.com. And if you like the show, be kind, recommend.
And you mentioned recently, don't be afraid to throw some questions our way.
We're looking for questions.
Because we have answers.
Yeah. Theoretically, we have answers.
Right. And we're happy to talk about them in a future segment. But listen, we're done for tonight, but next time, tune in as we confront the topic of obsession.
Ooh.
We'll have 6 films to recommend, but of course, we're also interested in what you think, so don't hesitate to hit us up on social. In the meantime, feel free to stop by the counter for a movie to watch, and we will see you next time.
Thanks, everybody. Working hard.
As always.
Hail Satan.